A homeless black man had been receiving meals from his future bride for years. Then something incredible happened. 12 Marines appeared at her wedding ceremony wearing full dress uniforms. "Remove that vagrant immediately. He's destroying our photo opportunity," the wedding planner yelled, while gesturing toward the silver-haired black gentleman who had just walked into the sanctuary. Well-dressed attendees automatically stepped back, some pressing expensive tissues to their faces, others simply averting their gaze. The gentleman remained still near the doorway, his weathered yet tidy suit a stark contrast to the lavish surroundings. Helena Cardoso, age 29, was making final adjustments to her veil when the disturbance reached her ears. She immediately dropped her bouquet into her maid of honor's grasp and hurried along the church's side passages. Upon reaching the main sanctuary, her gaze locked with the man at the entrance, the same eyes she'd encountered nearly every morning for 5 long years. "Marcus!" she called out, gathering her dress train to cross the center aisle, completely disregarding the carefully orchestrated timeline. The wedding planner stepped in her path, urgently whispering, "Helena, sweetheart, please don't. The photographers have their shots ready. Your father is prepared for the processional. That man can remain outside." Helena gently moved the planner's hand aside. "He's not waiting anywhere, Lindsay. Marcus is my honored guest." 3 meters distant, Ricardo Santos, her groom, observed the unfolding scene with a calm smile that puzzled those who caught his expression. He understood exactly who Marcus was. "I'm amazed you made it," Helena said, embracing the man without regard for her silk gown. Marcus smiled bashfully. "I kept my word. I even wore the suit you helped me obtain." The beginning of an extraordinary bond. 5 years prior, Helena had recently completed culinary training when she launched her small downtown cafe. Each morning before dawn, she would prepare the day's first breads and pastries. Daily, at 5:30 a.m., she would set aside a full meal and steaming coffee. Her first encounter with Marcus was beneath the cafe's awning, where he sheltered from the rain. Without fanfare, she simply left the food package and coffee beside him before returning to her duties. The following morning, he remained, and the morning after that as well. "This isn't necessary," he mentioned after 2 weeks when he finally found courage to speak. "I understand," Helena responded simply, "but it's what I choose to do." Gradually, silent acknowledgments evolved into brief exchanges. Marcus never requested anything beyond what she provided. He appeared at the identical spot with quiet dignity that Helena respected. Her staff couldn't comprehend it. "You're squandering quality food on street people," a cook once remarked. Helena fixed him with a stern look. "If I hear that comment, again, find yourself another position." When the cafe gained recognition and attracted more customers, complaints emerged about the homeless man deterring business. Helena responded by expanding her space while maintaining her morning tradition unchanged. An unexpected revelation. Now, at her wedding, as guests murmured and Helena's mother watched in dismay, something even more remarkable occurred. The sound of vehicles arriving abruptly outside captured everyone's attention. Coordinated footsteps resonated in the entryway. Then, to universal astonishment, 12 men in pristine marine dress uniforms entered in precise formation. Their leader, bearing 3 stars on his shoulder, approached Helena and Marcus. He delivered a formal salute that immediately hushed the entire congregation. "Sergeant Marcus Washington," he declared in a commanding voice. "1st Marine Division, recipient of the Silver Star for exceptional valor in battle. It's our privilege to finally meet you, sir." The guests who moments earlier had turned away now stared in shock. The same individuals who had whispered "beggar" and "vagrant" now witnessed 12 elite Marines showing respect to a man they had judged purely by appearance. What nobody realized was that Marcus carried more than his meager belongings through city streets. He also bore the burden of a heroic history that most could never comprehend, and invisible wounds that had driven him into society's shadows, the same society for which he had risked everything. The hidden truth emerges. "How did you locate the wedding?" Helena asked the lieutenant, still holding Marcus's hand. "Your fiancé contacted us 3 months ago, ma'am," the officer responded. "It required that time to assemble everyone who served alongside Sergeant Washington." Helena's eyes shifted to Ricardo, who was now calmly walking down the aisle. Her fiancé had maintained this secret throughout their relationship. "You were aware?" she whispered as Ricardo reached her. "Not completely," Ricardo answered quietly. "But I had suspicions from when you first described him. The bearing, the self-control, even in hardship. Some qualities Marines retain forever." Ricardo, himself a former Marine, had recognized signs others overlooked. Not the worn clothing or shabby appearance, but the unwavering dignity with which Marcus faced his circumstances. As a Marine Corps physician, Ricardo identified trauma symptoms that many veterans carried after returning from combat. The story behind the streets. "Why didn't you ever mention your military service?" Helena asked Marcus as the ceremony paused. "For reorganization." Marcus looked down. "Because I didn't want special treatment based on a uniform I no longer earned the right to wear. I wanted to discover who genuinely cared about the person, not the rank." Helena's cafe had become his peaceful sanctuary. During nights when nightmares tormented him most severely, when memories of Fallujah and faces of lost comrades haunted him, he knew hot coffee and an authentic smile awaited him. "Your coffee was the first thing in 5 years that wasn't given from pity or duty," Marcus continued. "It was offered without interrogation, without conditions. You cannot imagine what that means when you feel invisible." The full story revealed ici. Lieutenant cleared his throat respectfully. "Ma'am, with your permission, we'd like to share how we knew Sergeant Washington." Helena nodded while guests, including those who had demanded Marcus's removal, now listened intently. "In 2011, during an operation in Fallujah, our unit faced an ambush. Sergeant Washington not only rescued 6 of us under intense fire, but returned 3 separate times to retrieve the wounded." The officer paused. "He received the Silver Star, but official records don't reflect that he sustained severe injuries that never properly healed." Helena's mother, who had observed with clear disapproval, now had tears streaming down her face. She approached tentatively, ashamed of her earlier judgment. "We've been searching for Sergeant Washington for years," the lieutenant continued. "After multiple operations, he simply vanished. He declined his military pension and abandoned treatment. Some suspected he might be battling PTSD, but we couldn't locate him. A secret mission of love, what nobody knew except Helena, and now Ricardo, was that Marcus harbored another even more devastating secret, one that explained why he had chosen streets over military benefits he'd earned. Helena had uncovered this truth accidentally about a year after meeting Marcus. During an especially cold morning, she had insisted he warm up inside the cafe before customers arrived. That's when she noticed scars on his hands, surgical marks unrelated to combat. In a rare vulnerable moment, Marcus had revealed his deepest torment. "I failed them," he confessed, voice barely audible. "I survived when they didn't. Every dollar of that military compensation stains my hands with their blood." Helena never pressured Marcus to elaborate, respecting his invisible wounds. But in that moment, she decided to do more than simply provide food. 3 years of quiet. Investigation, what nobody at the church knew, not even Ricardo until recently, was that for 3 years, Helena had been working secretly behind the scenes. With assistance from a veterans' rights attorney, she had carefully investigated Marcus's military record and discovered the complete truth about his commendation and the incident that tormented him. She had tracked down fellow platoon members, gathered reports, and documented testimonies, all without ever pressuring Marcus to reveal more than he was prepared to share. "Mr. Washington," said the lieutenant, "we've come not only to honor your presence but to rectify an error that has persisted for over a decade." One Marine stepped forward, carrying a polished wooden case with a Marine Corps emblem carved into the lid. Helena felt Marcus's hand tighten in hers, now trembling slightly. "The Navy Cross." The lieutenant opened the polished case, revealing the Navy Cross, the second highest decoration for combat valor, awarded exclusively for extraordinary heroism. Sergeant Marcus Washington, he announced in a voice that echoed through the silent church. Following extensive review, the Marine Corps acknowledges and corrects the record of your actions in Fallujah, March 12, 2011. Marcus's face contorted. With emotion he struggled to control. That date, the day he carried like an invisible scar more painful than any physical wound. Evidence confirms that, after initially rescuing 6 Marines under enemy fire, Sergeant Washington returned alone to a certain death zone to save 3 other severely wounded comrades, including then-Lieutenant James Miller. One of the Marines, in formation, stepped forward. A man with visible facial scars. "I'm James Miller," he said, voice steady but emotional. "I was left for dead that day. The medics said there was no possibility I could survive long. Enough for evacuation." Marcus stared at the man as if seeing a ghost. "Miller, I was told you didn't make it to transport." "I survived because of you," Miller replied, "and I wasn't alone." The untold heroism, the lieutenant continued. During the 3rd rescue, the vehicle was struck by explosives. Despite serious injuries, he shielded the wounded with his own body, suffering 3rd-degree burns across 40% of his body. Helena gripped Marcus's hand tighter, feeling the scars beneath her fingers. Scars she'd noticed from day 1, but never questioned. What the official report omitted, the officer continued, was that among those rescued were 2 local civilians, a woman and her 8-year-old daughter. Civilians who, according to policy then, should not have been evacuated using military resources. A surprised murmur swept through the church. Helena's mother covered her mouth, tears now flowing down her previously scornful face. For saving those unauthorized lives, Sergeant Washington faced potential court-martial. Instead, he accepted quiet medical discharge and forfeiture of full benefits. He chose to disappear rather than compromise colleagues who had assisted him. A survivor's testimony. A young woman stepped forward with Middle Eastern features and eyes holding untold stories. "My name is Amamira," she said in flawless English. "I was 8 years old when an American Marine carried me through flames, even after being wounded. My mother didn't survive, but thanks to Sergeant Washington, I did." She approached Marcus, who appeared completely stunned. "After my adoption by an American family, I spent years trying to find the man who saved me. All I remembered were his kind eyes and his promise, 'You will live a long and wonderful life, little one.' That's a promise. Through Helena, I finally found you," Amamira continued, tears in her eyes. She never gave up. 3 years of searching, hundreds of emails, dozens of petitions. She found my adoption records, connected them to the Fallujah mission, and began locating Marines who were there. The wedding coordinator's shame. The guests who had earlier demanded Marcus's removal now watched in absolute silence, many with expressions of obvious shame. The wedding coordinator, who had been so eager to remove Marcus, was now crying openly. "I didn't know," she whispered. "How could I have known?" "That's exactly the point," Helena replied softly. "We never know someone's complete story just by observing their current situation." The weight of survivor's guilt. Marcus finally spoke, his voice gaining strength with each word. "I chose the streets not because of my injuries, though they were devastating. I chose to disappear because I couldn't accept being called a hero for saving some when I couldn't save all." He looked at Amamira. "For years I carried guilt for her mother, for comrades I couldn't rescue. I believed I deserved nothing. No recognition, no comfort, not even basic societal support." The senior officer gestured, and another Marine approached with an official document. "As of today, your record is cleared and corrected. Your full benefits have been retroactively restored. And most importantly, the order you disobeyed to save civilians has been officially recognized as an order that should never have existed." The question that changed everything. Marcus looked at Helena, his eyes now shining not only with tears, but with something he had lost long ago, restored dignity. Why did you do all this for me? All this work for years? Helena smiled. Because the day I gave you that first cup of coffee, you thanked me by looking me directly in the eye. Not as someone receiving charity, but as one human being acknowledging another. In that moment, I realized there was more to you than the circumstances that brought you to that bench. A standing ovation for humanity as the Marines repositioned themselves, the guests, the same ones who had wrinkled their noses and whispered, "Insults," rose in spontaneous applause, not for the uniform or medals, but for the man who, even when society abandoned him, never lost his fundamental humanity. The transformation in surrounding faces was almost tangible, from disdain and prejudice to admiration and profound respect. But perhaps the most significant transformation was invisible. The inner journey of a man who was finally beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved to be seen as a human being, worthy of respect. 6 months later. A new beginning after. The wedding ceremony that became a military honor ceremony, Marcus Washington's life transformed completely, not just because of official benefit restoration and belated recognition of his heroism, but because of something much deeper, the restoration of his identity and dignity. 6 months later, Marcus was no longer homeless. With Helena and Ricardo's help, he finally accepted medical and psychological treatment he desperately needed. Physical scars from his burns began receiving modern treatment unavailable when he disappeared years earlier. More importantly, the PTSD that had destroyed his ability to live among people was finally being properly addressed. It was never about money or benefits, Marcus explained during his first public interview, granted only to a small community station. It was about believing I didn't deserve help when so many others didn't get a chance. The Washington Project. Real change came through the Washington Project, an initiative founded by Helena and Ricardo, with help from the Marines who had appeared at the wedding. The mission was dual: identify homeless veterans and connect them with mental health resources and train professionals and citizens to recognize signs of military trauma. The prejudice I experienced wasn't just about my race or housing situation. Marcus explained during the groundbreaking ceremony for the project's first clinic. It was about our collective inability to see the complete person beyond first impressions. Amamira, the Iraqi girl Marcus had saved, now a medical student, joined the team as a volunteer. When Sergeant Washington carried me from that burning building, he didn't see a foreigner, an enemy, or a burden. He saw a child who deserved to live. I'm just returning the favor. Transformed hearts. Ironically, some wedding guests who had been most hostile toward Marcus became the cause's strongest supporters. The transformation didn't stem from guilt, but from the deeply uncomfortable experience of having their prejudices exposed so publicly. I thought I was a good person, confessed one of Helena's aunts at a charity event. I try. Then I realized how quickly I had judged someone based solely on appearance. It was like seeing my own character reflected in a harsh mirror. A year after the wedding, Helena's Cafe had expanded to include job training for veterans. Marcus, now regaining confidence as a speaker, often shared his story in schools and businesses, not as a sob story, but as a powerful reminder of human complexity hidden beneath surface labels. When you encounter people on the street, he always concluded his talks, remember that you are not seeing a homeless person. You're seeing a person who, through circumstances often beyond their control, doesn't have a home right now. Full circle. Perhaps the clearest sign of Marcus's complete transformation was his decision, 2 years after the wedding, to wear his uniform again for the christening of Helena and Ricardo's daughter, a girl named Amamira, honoring the child he saved years ago. As Marcus, now healthy and standing tall with all the military bearing he had always possessed, held little Amira in his arms, the circle was complete, from an invisible man on the streets to a respected and beloved godfather. The lasting message at the cafe where it all began, now with a small gold plaque near the entrance reading, "Every cup tells a story. Every person deserves to be seen." Helena and Ricardo decided against a traditional honeymoon. Instead, they used that money to purchase a small building beside the cafe. transforming it into the Washington Project's first community center. At the entrance, a simple quote is engraved: "Kindness is not charity when it recognizes the humanity in every person, because sometimes the person we serve coffee to every morning may have saved more lives than we will ever know. And sometimes the most heroic act isn't rescuing someone from a burning building, but simply seeing their humanity when the rest of the world looks right through them."